So let's just jump right in. So, Steve, you were I have your bio here. You were founded Apple, right? Is that right? Is that correct?
I founded that, yeah. I've also founded IBM. And,
all right. Restart.
Well.
No. Okay, so for those who don't know, AOL. How many people had AOL accounts? All right. This man did that. And was responsible for getting us online. So let's get a round of applause for that. Pretty awesome.
And if you have those AOL email addresses, and maybe some of you are embarrassed to have them, they're actually getting to be cool. It's like the LP coming back. So just keep those AOL addresses.
Keep it coming, yeah. I have an AIM one too, actually. I have both. All right, so basically, you're here at South by. This is not your first rodeo. You've been here before. We talked last year about what was going on. I want to just get your take, on things that are happening this year and what you're excited about here in Austin.
Well, I think in general, it's always exciting to see tens of thousands of people talking about new ideas, new services, talking about their passion, and it's very inspirational just to talk to people, irrespective of what they're trying to do.
Right.
But although there's still some focus on some interesting tech, VR in particular has got a lot of attention. I think the thing I've been most excited to see is how many entrepreneurs are really focusing on some big challenges in society, but that are also opportunities, whether it be education or healthcare or energy or food. There's lots of really interesting kind of out-of-the-box thinking, and so it's not just about the app. Mm-hmm. It's really about changing some important aspect of our lives, and in the process disrupting some big sectors of the economy. And the other thing I like, although there's still a lot of work to be done, is how many entrepreneurs are really focusing on purpose-driven businesses, sort of impact businesses. And we're beginning to see, although there's still tremendous work to be done on this front, a little bit more diversity, more around inclusive entrepreneurship, and hopefully those trends will continue, and people will focus more on the big ideas that really matter in people's lives, but also create big opportunities to build great companies and do it in a way that levels the playing field, so every entrepreneur anywhere, not just frankly the white guys in San Francisco or New York, have a real shot at building a great company.
Okay, that's a great segue for kind of some of the things you've been up to. So, so after last year, South by, we all got on a bus and we rode around the country for the Rise of the Rest tour. At that point, I think you were doing 10 cities, and at this point, I think you've done 19 cities, invested, in 19 different companies in those cities, and about $2 million for these different cities. And just want to talk a little bit more about that. What was the goal? What was your goal there? What have you seen around the country, and kind of your overall take on it?
Well, the goal is really to shine a spotlight on the great entrepreneurs building great companies all over the country. Most of the focus of the investors and most of the focus of the media is on a few places. Last year, 75% of venture capital went to California, New York, and Massachusetts. 75%.
Wow.
And that does not reflect the distribution of great entrepreneurs with great ideas.
Right.
I'm bullish on San Francisco, I'm bullish on New York, I'm bullish on Boston, but I'm also bullish on Des Moines and Detroit and Atlanta and New Orleans and Madison and Pittsburgh and Portland, all kinds of great cities that are really inspiring a generation of great entrepreneurs. And how do we tell their story? And we decided to do it in part by getting on a bus and driving around the country and bring media on board, you, and bring the mayors and the governors on board, and bring the big Fortune 500 companies in those cities on board, and create a little bit of a mashup of some of these different perspectives to really create more density, more connections within each of these cities we visit, but also try to then tell their stories around the country, even around the world.
It was a lot of fun, too. We had a good time.
We did.
We did a lot of different things. We went to, I think you threw out first pitch. You did a bunch of stuff. I think we met every governor along the way.
That was the toughest. We were in Raleigh, and they asked me to throw out the first pitch of the baseball game, which is kind of scary. Because
the Durham Bulls.
What if you really screw it up?
Right.
Thankfully, I didn't. But
I told you should throw it over the backstop.
What's that?
You should have thrown it over the backstop. Just like the TV or the movie. Anyway, all right, so this week we had, Friday we had President Obama join us for the first time here at South by Southwest. The first time a president has ever come to speak at South by Southwest. Wanted to get your take on what does that mean for the state of innovation and entrepreneurship in America?
Well, I think it's terrific. I think the fact that the president came and was talking about the role entrepreneurs play in creating the products and services, creating the companies that create the jobs and create the growth in communities and growth for the country overall was important. But I think it also was a signal that this next wave of innovation is going to require more engagement with government. Most of the sectors that are most ripe for disruption, like healthcare, but also education, some of the other ones I mentioned, government has a seat at the table, both as a regulator and in many cases as a large customer. And so we need to build more of a bridge between the entrepreneurial community and sort of the policy community. Right now they're kind of separate worlds and don't much like each other, and that's not going to be the way to kind of make sure we're innovating in these new sectors. So I think that was the important lesson. There's a dozen mayors. I just came from an event with the mayor of DC and another event prior to that talking about immigration and diversity with the mayors of Atlanta and Baltimore and Louisville.
Right.
So I think that people are starting to realize that it requires more of a connection, more of a sense of a mutual understanding and more of a partnership to really kind of take on some of these intractable problems, but also are great entrepreneurial opportunities.
Right. And you just mentioned the third wave, and you've got a book called The Third Wave. And I assume 'cause you're from Hawaii, your upbringing there, I assume this is a surfing book? No?
Well, I must say when I came in here, I hadn't seen the sign downstairs, the big third wave sign. That's kind of cool. It doesn't actually come out for 3 weeks, and the publisher at the time interested said, "Don't talk too much about it."
Oh, we're not talking
because
about
it.
Because
we don't want don't like it. It's so many secrets in it. We can't tell everybody and preempt the media. So I'm trying to be respectful of them. But it does deal with some of these topics we're talking about in terms of the next wave of innovation, how that's going to play out, and some of the issues around the rise of rest, impact investing, and things like that. I think it's going to be very exciting, but it's going to require a different kind of mindset for entrepreneurs. It's not just about, of course, the team you build, people are critical. Of course, the product you build is critical, and if you're successful, how do you kind of morph that product into more of a platform? That aspect will continue to be important. But there's 3 other aspects that I think also are important: policy and understanding that, partnerships, strategic partnerships, and perseverance, because some of these big opportunities are going to take some time. They're hard. It's not just about a dating app or a photo app. Although nothing wrong with dating apps and photo apps. I love any entrepreneur who does anything. But if you really want to revolutionize the way kids learn in K through 12, or you really want to revolutionize the way people are treated with more targeted kind of health solutions, or you really want to revolutionize the way food is made and distributed and consumed, that's going to require a different mindset, both in terms of partnerships and policy, and more perseverance, because these are hard problems. You're going to have fewer overnight successes.
Right. So that makes sense. And I know we didn't hear it here first at all. This is top secret that we're even talking about the book. But I wanted to ask. Right.
Top secret.
Top secret. Wanted to ask you a little bit more.
Anybody from Simon & Schuster listening? I did not even
They're on
talk
there.
about
They're
the
everywhere.
book. I was talking about somebody else.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit more. You're busy. Like, you have a lot going on. You've got the fund. You're involved in a lot of different things. Why did you want to write a book? What was the kind of impetus for that, and just kind of the why?
Well, I'd actually been asked to write a book really multiple times in the last 20 years, and I just didn't feel like it was something I wanted to do. And I think the main reason was I, like many of you, care much more about the future than the past. Right. And so I was never interested in writing a memoir about the early days of the internet, or it just wasn't interesting. I was like, what's next? What's next? What's next? So it really was only when I realized a couple of years ago, including on some of the work we're doing in terms of the rise of the rest and talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurship was changing, and it was changing in some unique ways. And in fact, even though it's different, what's happening in the third wave, different than the second wave, there actually are some similarities to the first wave. So telling some of those stories, we got started 30 years ago in the early days of the internet and the role of partnerships and things like that would help inform the entrepreneurs in the future. So once it became to me a book about the future and kind of a little bit of a memoir, but much more of a manifesto and a roadmap, then I was interested in writing it.
That makes a lot of sense. So you've learned a lot, obviously, along the way too. And so sharing some of those roadblocks, sharing some of those lessons, is that what might be in a book that we can't talk about?
Exactly.
Okay. So along those same lines, because we're not talking about it, what do you believe? Like, so geography. We've talked about geography a little bit with the cities you've been to. Do you think that what's your kind of perspective on how that has an effect on the startups and the startup scenes and the ecosystems, and maybe some of the challenges that each has to overcome?
Well, let me just see a show of hands. How many people here are not from California, New York, or Massachusetts?
Wow.
So I think it's
Lots
more than half.
Yeah.
Maybe 2/3.
Right.
And I think you have a harder time raising capital.
Right.
You have a harder time attracting talent. You have a harder time getting noticed, which is why coming to South by and pitching or other things becomes important to kind of break through and get noticed. And that's just not right, and that's not smart. And so how do you create more of that level playing field I was talking about, I think is critically important. And I also believe in these next great sectors ripe for disruption, many of the great companies that are now the incumbents are in those 47 states.
Mm-hmm.
And if partnerships really matter, and I think they do, being in a place where you have natural allies and partners makes sense. I met an entrepreneur last night who moved his company from San Francisco to Houston because it's in healthcare. He has a partnership with a hospital system there. So San Francisco, Silicon Valley more broadly, New York, Boston, those all will continue to do well. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I think there are great innovations in many areas. Agriculture, for example, ag tech. I'll bet it. Keep an eye on Louisville. Keep an eye on St. Louis. Right. There's a lot of smart people understand that world and engineers who've been doing it for a long time. And while some of that innovation will come from California, New York, Massachusetts, my bet is most of it will come from other parts that some people on the coast kind of deride as sort of flyover country, and I think it's really the heart of America, and that's where a lot of great companies have been built. 75% of our Fortune 500 companies are not in California, New York, Massachusetts. Right. So I think the history is there, and that some of that past I think will be a prediction of the future in terms of the impact of some of these sectors. New Orleans is big in ed tech. Baltimore, Madison, Nashville are big in healthcare. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh is big in robotics. That's where Uber is putting its plant. So there are really great things happening in these cities, and that story is not told, and that's why we're trying to kind of push this rise of the rest message. Right.
That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot going on everywhere. And a quick follow-up, and I know you're tight. You're running around tonight too, so I don't want to take up all your. Actually, I would like to take up all your time.
But also, people are really here to hear the winner of the pitch.
Right. No, we're just.
I am filler. Just be honest about this. I am filler.
Oh.
And once he gets the signal that we have a winner, it's okay. Shut up, Steve. We got a winner.
I think he's on to my plan. Okay. So, yes, they're going to give us the
winner.
Hook. They're going to give us the hook.
And also, the people want the bar open.
Shut them up. They want to open the bar.
I get it. I get it.
We are
filler and keeping you between you and the bar.
Right.
So one last question. Come on.
Okay. So really,
get it out. Get it out.
I just want to. I know the bar. I just want to reiterate. You basically just focused on sharing that customers matter, relationships matter, and connections matter. Is that true?
Absolutely. There's an African proverb that I think will help inform this next era of entrepreneurship, which if you want to go quickly, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you must go together. Mm-hmm. So this skill around not just creating the team internally, but creating almost a network around your company and partnerships that kind of help leverage what you're doing and accelerate what you're doing is critical. So it's a spirit of partnership across a whole variety of sectors in hopefully a way that's way more inclusive, way more diverse in terms of place and people and ideas. And if we get that right, I think the next era has the opportunity to be a tremendous kind of era of innovation. And part of this, I should have said at the beginning, even though I'm not talking about the book.
No, we're not talking
about. In case Simon Schuster's listening, I'm not talking about the book. But
what book?
Briefly, I'd say the backstory is the first wave was really building the internet, building awareness of the internet, which you now think is silly, but when we started AOL 30 years ago, only 3% of people were online. And those 3% were only online 1 hour a week. So getting people, building the software, building the servers, building the networks, building the infrastructure, and educating people why they wanted to get on sort of on these on-ramps was that kind of first wave. The second wave, really been the last 15 years, has been building on top of the internet. So it has been the app economy and obviously smartphones and so forth, really about the software. And the third wave will be integrating it in more seamless ways into everyday life in some of the sectors I mentioned.